Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the N1 Fitness Podcast. I'm your host as always, Marcus Sadu, and today we are talking about the scale. Dun, dun, dun. No, just kidding. So post-holidays, you may have noticed that you're a wee bit heavier from all the festivities, the food, the booze. So I thought it'd be a perfect time to address all the factors that impact your scale weight. So let's say you stepped on the scale before the holidays and then, January 1 or something like that, and you're up 10 pounds. It doesn't necessarily mean that you put on 10 pounds of fat. I mean, it's possible, but there are some other factors at play here that impact your scale weight. So let's talk about them. So first one is the time of day that you weigh yourself. If you're going to weigh yourself first thing in the morning versus, say, midday after lunch or post-dinner late at night, that is really going to change just based on your, water intake, food intake, and all that sort of stuff that we're going to address later on. But you basically, when it comes to when you weigh yourself, you want to make it as consistent as possible. So if you always weigh yourself in the morning, stick with that. If you always weigh yourself at night, stick with that. It's not necessarily what the number reads, but just be sure that it's consistent across the board as far as timing goes. Meal timing. So like I just said, right before a meal, right after, hours later, this is going to impact your weight. So first thing in the morning, you're probably going to be your lightest. And then, last thing at night before you go to bed or after dinner, you're probably going to be your heaviest. So just keep that in mind, that meal timing impacts your scale weight. Carbohydrates also. So each gram of carbohydrates that you eat pulls 3 grams of water with it. Okay, so there's 454 grams in a pound. So let's say you increase your carbohydrate intake by about 150 grams, which is, maybe 3 cups of cooked rice, just as an example. That's going to pull about a pound of water with it because each gram of carbohydrates pulls 3 grams of water. So this is why you see people that go on low carb diets or say, ketogenic diets are really popular right now. Your scale weight drops really quickly initially because you lose a lot of that water weight that comes along with the carbohydrate that you eat. So that's not necessarily fat gain or fat loss right off the bat, but you're either losing or gaining water based on the amount of carbohydrate that you're eating. So keep that in mind when you are looking at your scale weight. Next one is bloating and food intolerances. So foods that you don't tolerate well cause water retention and inflammation in the body. So you eat a food that you don't tolerate, you feel bloated, your pants fit a little bit tighter. That will increase your scale weight because there's just some inflammation and water retention going on. So classic places you can notice it is in your face, hands, feet, stomach. So practically, if you wear a wedding ring, if your wedding ring in the morning fits just fine, and then, after lunch or after dinner, it's super tight and you have a hard time getting it off, you probably ate something that you didn't tolerate all that well, so you got some inflammation in your hands. Shoelaces are another good one to keep an eye on. So if you have a lot less lace showing after, say, a night out of some funky food and stuff like that, you're probably holding some water in your feet. There's some inflammation going on via funky foods. And so you don't have to use as much lace essentially to tie up your shoe, or you use more lace to tie up your shoe. So you don't have as much lace showing. That's another practical thing to kind of keep an eye out for. If you wear a watch and your watch is fitting extra tight, probably got some inflammation going on there. You can look at your face too, eyes and cheeks. If you feel really puffy, again, inflammation most likely from some funky foods. Next thing is bathroom trips. So if you are regular or if you're backed up, that's going to make a difference in your scale weight. So say you haven't, gone number 2 in 2 or 3 days. That is absolutely going to impact your scale weight if you are constipated. And a really simple way to help with constipation is just to drink more water. And then actually also something that I've noticed anecdotally from an emotional angle, it's Folks that tend to kind of be a little bit more uptight struggle with being constipated a little more than folks that are a little bit more easygoing. So it's something to keep an eye on. That kind of makes sense, right? So something to keep an eye on just from sort of the mental emotional angle as well. But, water is a really simple tip. And then sometimes you need more fiber, and sometimes you might actually be taking in too much fiber. I'd say I see fiber intake being too low more often than too high, but both are possible. So something to keep an eye on. For the women, your menstrual cycle is going to impact your weight. So before and or during your cycle, chances are you're going to have some water retention going on, and that's going to impact your scale weight. So, an average size woman can easily put on, say, 2 to 3 pounds, maybe a larger woman, 4 to 5 pounds, no problem, before or during their cycle. So don't sweat this. It's not like this is fat gain. It's just your body doing its thing around its cycle. So don't sweat it. It'll come off, assuming that you stay on point with your food, movement, sleep, all that sort of stuff. So nothing to stress about there. Recent food volume. So this kind of ties in with the meal timing, but if you're going to eat a whole bunch, like a huge amount of steamed veggies, or maybe a bunch of potato, that's a really, really dense or heavy foods, that's going to impact your scale weight more than something like, just a single lean serving of protein. That food volume is going to impact the scale. So another thing to keep in mind. And then high fiber. So fiber slows gastric emptying. So basically, if you look at people that are doing, say, MMA or wrestling or boxing, where they have to weigh in on a specific day to make a weight class, a lot of the times they'll follow a low fiber diet, say, 3 to 5 days leading up to that weigh-in, because it's also called a low residue diet, because they want to essentially maximize gastric emptying, get all the sort of residual food out of their gastrointestinal tract, and basically maximize that sort of weight cutting aspect, so then they can weigh it in a lower class, and then fight at that weight. So something to keep in mind there. If you're on a higher fiber diet, it can slow gastric emptying, but realistically, you should probably be taking in a decent amount of fiber, 24/7. So that one might not apply as much, just, for your info. Salt intake. Salt pulls water with it. So if you eat a super high salt meal, don't be shocked that your weight goes up. Also, typically high salt meals come along with high carbohydrate meals, and like we touched on before, that pulls water with it. So fat gain doesn't happen that quickly. Don't stress about this. Just another thing to keep in mind. Stress raises a hormone called aldosterone, and aldosterone makes your body hold on to salt. And like we just talked about, salt makes you retain water. So this is just your body responding to stress. Nothing to worry about too much here. Again, just your body doing its thing. That's going to impact your weight. Sleep as well. Lack of sleep is a stress in itself. So that's going to raise aldosterone, increase water retention as well. Now, that's not the only mechanism for temporary weight gain via sleep loss. It throws off your whole circadian rhythm, sleep loss does, or sleep debt. So that's a whole nother bigger issue that we're not going to get into today. But there are a bunch of different factors at play that, sleep impacts every single system in your body. Nothing goes untouched when you're not sleeping properly, just like nothing goes untouched when you are sleeping properly. So just a plug for quality sleep there. Movement, lack of movement is going to make it more likely that you are going to be sluggish digestion-wise. So movement in itself gets things moving. If you are stagnant, your bowels are probably going to be stagnant as well. So just a plug for sleep and a plug for movement as well there, just to keep digestion on track. And both of those factors, where you're at, sleep and movement-wise, is going to impact your weight. Hard gym sessions and training are going to cause a little bit of inflammation, most likely, and some water retention. So this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but It's just your body's response to a stressor. And let's say you go in the gym and do 3 sets of 10 on the squat. That's your normal sort of training routine. And you go in another day and you all of a sudden you do 10 sets of 10 on the squat and you increase your volume a ton. That is going to be a stressor, and your body's going to hold on to some water in response to that. Again, nothing to worry about. If you had an extra hard workout, that might impact your scale weight a little bit. Now, having touched on all of those factors that impact your weight, don't kind of kid yourself into thinking that if the scale isn't trending down, it must be because of one of the factors that we just mentioned. Your weight needs to be trending down if weight loss is your goal. So just be careful that you're not like, oh, it was a movement thing this day, and I was backed up this day, and I had a high salt meal, and then, it was a food volume thing, and then I, got my period. So these factors play a role, but your weight still needs to be trending down. So just, it's kind of easy to kid yourself on that front. So keep that in mind. How you can use the scale to your advantage. So you can weigh yourself either daily, weekly, bi-weekly, whatever. It's up to you. It's based on personal preference. I find that some of my clients do really well weighing themselves every single day because it just keeps them on track. But I reiterate the things above, what can impact their scale weight, so they don't get too wrapped up in the day-to-day fluctuation, but more so that the weight is trending in the direction that we want it to trend. So whatever kind of suits you, weekly, daily, bi-weekly, whatever is going to keep you on track. Some folks get a little bit neurotic as far as weighing themselves every single day. They can go a little crazy. So if that's you, cut it to every week as opposed to every day. Just know yourself on that front. And then weigh yourself at the same time each day. So we touched on that right in the beginning. It's probably best first thing in the morning. It's just simple. Make it a part of your routine if you do decide to weigh yourself every day. And then if you're going to weigh yourself weekly, again, make sure it's at the same time every day. So maybe it's Sunday or Monday morning, every week. Just make it nice and consistent. Take a weekly or monthly average. So if you're trending up, you're gaining. If you're trending down, you're losing. So you can say add up your week or month, take all your weights, and then divide those days by however many days you took into the sample. As long as you're trending down, you're heading in the right direction. If you weigh yourself each week and, if your weight is going up, obviously, then you're probably going in the wrong direction. So take those averages as opposed to getting, too wrapped up in the day-to-day fluctuations like we touched on. So the scale isn't the be-all, end-all, but it is a tool. So I'm not a fan of people that are like, throw out your scale's useless. Like it can be a tool. If you find yourself going a little crazy with it, then you can, use some other tactics. But again, it's a tool at your disposal to make sure that you're moving in the direction that you want to move. You can also use progress pictures. I use progress pictures with all of my nutritional coaching clients. The mirror, you can use that one too. That can be a little bit tricky because I feel like your eyes can deceive you. But your clothes are also a really good one. They either fit or they don't. They're either getting tighter or they're getting looser. So those are some other things that you can use to assess your progress along the way and not just the scale. So use everything. And one more thing that I see with clients all the time that I just want to touch on is that they might be having a great week nutrition-wise. Their movement's on point. Their sleep was bang on. Their energy is up. Clothes are fitting better. And then they step on the scale and they're upset by that number. So they were expecting to see, say, a bigger loss. That doesn't make sense. You're in that case, the person is weighing the scale too heavily. So if all the other signs are pointing towards progress and the scale hasn't moved as much as you want it to move, that's okay. You need to pay attention to your subjective experience as well, is because those are tools and those are feedback too, just like the scale. So I have had weeks where clients have maybe not even lost a pound, maybe they've maintained, or maybe they've even gained weight, but we busted through a mental or an emotional barrier. That is progress as well. So keep that in mind. It's not purely physical, but if it's sort of, maybe it takes a week where you maintain your weight or maybe even gained a pound or two, but you push through an emotional or a mental barrier. It's, maybe one step back, two steps forward kind of deal. Keep that in mind too, because progress doesn't just come physically with this sort of stuff. Obviously, the mental and emotional plays in as well. So just like you don't want to freak out about one meal, poor meal choice, you don't want to freak out about one point in time when you step on the scale. So again, don't place too much emphasis on one day or one time when you weighed yourself. I personally can easily fluctuate 3, 4, 5 pounds, no problem, considering all the factors above, from weighing myself first thing in the morning to later at night. So again, stay consistent with it all, and don't stress about one point in time, but follow those trends and make sure that you're moving in the right direction. Thanks guys for listening. If you're digging the podcast, please do take a second and review it on iTunes so we can reach more folks with this info. If you've got questions for future Q&As or just future episodes in general, send them my way and I'll do my best to address them on the podcast. And thanks for listening. Enjoy your day. See ya.